Coming up on the lifestyle.org podcast.
Most people don't have a clue, and we're just scratching the surface. I've been doing this for half a century, and I'm just feeling more comfortable with it. There are no other creatures or mammals that create a mind that can direct the brain. Somebody might have a drink of alcohol when they're 16, and all of a sudden they liked it. And if they'd done family of origin work, they would have understood that alcoholism ran all through their family, and if they're wise, they never ever touch it.
Hey everybody, I'm here with my favorite brain specialist, Dr. Arlene Taylor, and I want us to start out, give us a tour of the brain so people even understand what in the world's going on in this thing on our shoulders.
Most people don't have a clue, and we're just scratching the surface. I've been doing this for half a century, and I'm just feeling more comfortable with it. So the brain. In adulthood, it's the size of your two fists. Mm-hmm. Of course, when you're born, it's much smaller, but by the age of 2, it's about the adult size. So the brain starts developing very early in conception, long before a woman knows she's pregnant.
Really?
And that's the sad part, because by the time she's missed her next menstrual period, the brain's already been growing perhaps several weeks. And if she's been doing things that are now shown to be deleterious to the brain, it's already been subjected to them.
Yeah.
Sometime after the brain develops, and nobody's quite sure exactly when that is, the mind emerges from the brain. As it develops, eventually it begins to relate to the brain and direct the brain, which makes us completely unique on planet Earth. There are no other creatures or mammals that create a mind that can direct the brain.
I'm fascinated by this because my biggest question is, where's the mind? You know, and that's huge studies going on right now. But you mentioned about the childhood brain, about the size at age 2, but development is, I mean, it continues on until what, 20s, 30s?
Well, the corpus callosum is probably not myelinated, wrapped with insulation till age 20 or 21. The brain is done somewhere now, very late 30s into the 40s. And by then, most people have made significant lifestyle choices that have impacted them for the rest of their lives.
So what does that mean for a person listening to this? If the brain hasn't developed, you know, until in your 20s or 30s?
Late 20s, early 30s, on into 40s.
What are some of the things that have not developed yet for, let's say, a young child or a teenager?
Willpower, making decisions, choosing among options, all kinds of things. So let me get through the brain.
Let's do that.
You could ask me questions all
I'm
week.
going to ask you all day, actually.
Okay, so the conscious mind, the conscious part of the brain that allows you and me to know that we're sitting here and we're real people, is only 20% of the entire subconscious. And the entire subconscious is the 80% of the brain in your entire body. It never sleeps, ever. It's the part that will be with us as long as we're alive on the planet and have a brain that is functioning. Although even with brains that have Alzheimer's, if you play a tune that they knew well in childhood, although they can't tell you your name or anything, they can sing the entire song, including the words, because it's coming out of the subconscious. The unconscious is a whole big different piece that remembers everything from about the 7th month of gestation. So now we believe that the fetus knows if it was wanted. It knows if it was the right sex. Did they want a a boy and they got a girl, like in my case, it remembers, it continually impacts us, although we're not aware of it. And this is, I got a couple of quick metaphors that make sense to me. First of all, vehicles create traffic. With no vehicles, there's no traffic. But the traffic then can constrain and interrupt the vehicles that created the traffic in the first place, which is pretty profound, because what you're putting in your brain is, the traffic and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, imagine this is right here with us is the conscious brain. All around us in this room are filing cabinets and drawers that have all the memories in it that our brain has decided that we periodically want to access, which is just a little bit. Downstairs in the basement is a huge walk-in freezer. Everything is loaded in the unconscious. But it's very, very difficult to access, because if you go down there and open the freezer and pull something out, you're not really sure what it is, and now it has to thaw.
Yeah.
And so the only way we really access the unconscious is when we get help. Somebody will ask us questions, and sometimes it will, encourage the subconscious to release something, or they'll say, remember when you were 2? 2? I don't remember anything at age 2. Well, draw a picture of you at 2. And they'll draw a picture of a baby being smothered that was loaded in the unconscious. But it's influencing us all the time, triggering PTSD, triggering all kinds of things. So that's the sections of the brain. The brain, the mind, the subconscious, and the unconscious.
I've heard that the subconscious it has been equated like your operating system. Like if you were to have an iPhone, you have an operating system where you put the apps on it. If you were to try to put an Android app on an Apple iOS phone, it wouldn't work because the operating system is. Do you see it the same way?
We each have an individually unique operating system. No two brains are alike on the planet. And if it's loaded in the operating system and you can access the system, that's where you get, I remember last week, blah, blah, blah.
Why do you think it's so important for people to understand this tour of the brain? What is vital for people to understand that there are these different segments?
I think it's important to do family of origin work, because many of the things we do subconsciously that turn into behaviors are because of what our ancestors for 2 or 3 or 4 years did. And those memories are loaded. They're loaded in the nucleus, we believe, on protein strands. And so somebody might have a drink of alcohol when they're 16, and all of a sudden they liked it. And if they'd done family of origin work, they would have understood that alcoholism ran all through their family, and if they're wise, they never ever touch it.
Yeah. So genetically, some of the issues that people have with their mind or their thoughts, it's passed on generationally?
It's passed on generationally, but it may be more through epigenetics than genetics, because genes can mutate for some reason during gestation, and you can develop something that nobody in your family ever had.
Yeah.
Or you have an increased risk. For example, women have an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's. Males don't get Alzheimer's as often.
How could you tell? I mean, we forget stuff all the time.
Don't get me started.
Okay.
Men have an increased risk for developing the other types of dementias, prefrontal orbital dementias and so on.
Yeah.
So there's even differences, and they run in families, but maybe largely through epigenetics. Some maybe. There are some types of Alzheimer's that probably have a genetic base. But even saying that, Genetics is only worth 30% of who we are and how we develop, and 70% is in our hands, and that's lifestyle.